Thanks, Leighton. Well, we have a special part of the service now because we come to inducting 2 new members, and we believe this is a biblical thing to do. That if you look in the New Testament, there's a public profession of faith and a joining to the local body. If you confess with your mouth, not just in your heart, but with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, or Timothy's told the good confession you made in front of many witnesses. In other words, it's a public profession. So we've taken Leighton and Steph, they've gone through the membership booklet that we used to confirm that they're really Christians. They did pretty well. So I'll invite them to come up and we will go through vows. But before that, if you guys want to stand over there, Leighton is, invite you come over here, Leighton, because I want you to, you're going to give us a little bit of a testimony on how you came to faith. So over to you.
Hello again. So I thought I'd start off my testimony with a bit of background into my upbringing. So I was brought up in a strong Christian household. I went to church every week from a baby until I was 18 with my family. And up until I was a teenager, I was kind of believed in what my parents believed in. However, as I started to get into my teenage years, I became quite sceptical of the Christian faith and found it all pretty boring, to be honest. And the fact that I had a lot of ungodly influences from my schoolmates and from footy, I became an umpire as well when I was in my early teens. I had a lot of ungodly influences in my life, so that probably didn't help that either. Fast forward a few years to when I turned 18, I had such a hunger for success and for making money. I got promoted to the VFL list, which is the one level below the AFL in an umpire. As before this, from 13 to 18, I umpired in the local leagues. And my goal from then on was to make AFL, as that's where all the status and all the money was. The footy scene in particular as well was not a good influence on me either, and I was living very much in the world during this time. I worked so hard for this, and once the start of 2018 came around at age 22, AFL scouts started watching me, and I was actually in the running to make the AFL list at the end of 2018. During this 2018 year, I was performing really well, and I got a lot of attention from various VFL and AFL umpire coaches. It's got to my head a little bit, and I remember thinking how good I was and how good life was. I became quite prideful as well. Everything was going right for me, and it seemed to all go right, and nothing was going wrong. Then at the end of the 2018 season, right before everyone was pretty much assuming that I was going to be the one getting on the AFL list, I started getting severe foot pain, which turned out from a scan to be a bad stress fracture in my foot, in a bone that doesn't heal very well. I still ended up getting onto the AFL list about a month or 2 after that happened. So this was my dream job since I was 14. However, after 3 weeks of getting on the AFL list, that 3 weeks was some of the best weeks of my life. A lot of celebration with family and friends, got a lot of calls and different things, and it's the thing I've been working on to make ever since I was 15. So it was a big celebration. But after 3 weeks of getting on the AFL list, despite being in a moon boot, we actually got more news about my foot, that it wasn't going to be a 6-month injury, but like everyone thought, and like I thought, and what AFL thought, but it ended up going to be probably a 12 to 14-month injury, and 2 months on crutches. So AFL had no choice but to take me off the list and told me to rehab and get back, and they'll put me on the following year at the end of 2019. I was committed then so hard to the rehab for the next year, as I was hungry more than ever to get back and get that AFL spot back. I returned after 13 months for about 3 games in the end of 2019, right before finals started, and then I got another stress fracture in my foot. This time they said it could be career ending, as I lost a lot of bone density in my whole foot because of it. As you could imagine, I was absolutely distraught. Being an AFL umpire and making money there was my main purpose in my life ever since I was a teenager, and now it seemed to be all over. I was actually pretty depressed for the next 6 weeks, being on crutches again, and I just kind of lost all purpose in life, thinking that, if I didn't have this, then, I had pretty much nothing else. One night in particular, and I still, obviously it's from God, but I still don't know why I did, but I was so down that I cried out to God. Not to heal me or anything, but just to show me if he was real, because I just wanted to know if there was a greater purpose in life. Even though I was still pretty sceptical that God was actually real. The next day I was actually watching Netflix, and there was this comment on this random TV show I was watching that kind of got me thinking whether that was God speaking to me or not. A character said to one of the other characters, "You've just got to have faith that things will get better for you." And I was like, was that God speaking to me? I thought, but ended up coming to the conclusion that it was just a coincidence, and kind of laughed it off before I went to bed. So the next day I thought, okay, maybe I should start looking into this Christianity a bit. What else am I going to do? And I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to read the Bible because the Bible is boring, as I found pretty much my whole teenage life. So I'm going to listen to a sermon. Maybe that will be a bit more interesting. I searched sermons in Spotify, and thousands of sermons appeared. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of sermons out there. So I just clicked the first one. I was like, all right, there's so many, I'll just click the first one and put it on in my car as I was ended up driving 40 minutes to my mate's house after work on a Friday night. About 20 minutes into the sermon, when I was driving, the preacher started speaking about his basketball career and how he was on the cusp of making it to college basketball in America, and how much that was getting to his head. Very, very similar situation to me. However, in one of the games, he tore his quad badly, which took him out for months. He then rehabbed his quad and gave it everything he could to return to playing again. He eventually got back, and he said that he then returned for 3 games. I returned for 3 games, and then he got a stress fracture in his foot. I got a stress fracture in my foot. He then said God was saying, "Chip, you can worship basketball or you can worship me." And all I heard was, "Leighton, you can worship football or you can worship me." I honestly felt like I'd been hit by a truck, which wasn't safe because I was driving. And I remember getting out of the car when I got to my friend's house, and I just remember completely seeing the world differently. And suddenly everything about God and Jesus and the cross over the coming days made just so much sense to me after seeing it all as stupid and silly for most of my life. The very thing that hit me was the very fact that God loved me that much that he put these injuries in my life, and he cared so much that he put those injuries in my life to draw me to him, and that Jesus died on the cross for me despite my complete rejection of him my whole life. I was brought up knowing that we are sinners, knowing that Jesus did that for us, and yet I still was not interested. And even though I rejected God that much, that he still chased me down and wanted me and died for my sins, despite that rejection really impacted me greatly. And my whole life changed from that day forward. That was 3 years ago. And since then, my purpose has just been God and nothing else. And it's been the greatest few years of my life. So, awesome.